after that encounter on that day, I never ever felt like a woman again, and I never ever felt uncomfortable in my body. Like from that day, something changed about the way I felt in my body. Like I was comfortable, I was good in my body for the first time in over 20 years. And I never ever was depressed again, and I never ever thought about ending my life again. Yeah, so I grew up in Moldova in a very traditional, normal family. I have two younger sisters, and I am the oldest. In my childhood, I was a pretty lonely child, um, because I was having very low self-esteem due to some health issues that I had as a child. Um, so growing up, I distanced myself from other people of my age, and couldn't really relate in school and then high school. And also, what I noticed was that men in my life, the men that I had in my life at that time, were struggling with alcohol. They were addicted to alcohol. They were um, talking about women in a very bad way. And also, the women that I had in my life, they were criticizing men a lot, and they were saying that men are idiots and they're jerks. And I kind of grew up with this mentality that men cannot do anything good, and that to be a man is something bad. And because of that, I thought that when I grow up, I will become like those men that I had in my life, that I would be addicted to alcohol, that I would despise women, that I would be mediocre in life. I wouldn't be able to do anything good. So that made me push masculinity away and not want to become like that, not want to identify with that. And whatever had to do with men in general and with masculinity, with manhood, was making me feel cringe and disgusted. And I think because of that, I kind of felt disconnected from my dad as well. I felt like I couldn't relate to my dad or to any other man in my life. I felt that we don't have anything in common, because I was looking to the women that I had in my life. Because for me, at that time, women seemed to be the only persons in the world that could actually be nice, that could be caring, that could be loving, that could be involved in your life. So I thought in my childish mind, that
Yeah.
if I am to become anything good in this life, I have to be a woman. I didn't grow up in a Christian family. It was just a culturally Christian environment, because the country is considered a Christian country, but we didn't practice any faith. We called ourselves Christians, but it was just a name. But I always believed that there must be a God, because looking at everything around me, I believe that there must be an author behind everything that exists. And the one who introduced me to Jesus for the first time, that I remember, was my grandma. She explained to me that Jesus was the Son of God. He died for our sins on the cross, and that's all that I knew about Jesus. I didn't know anything about having a relationship with him, about really connecting with him, about a new identity, about healing, deliverance, any of that. I just knew that he was he suffered for us, and that he resurrected from the dead, and that was it. In my adolescence, as I said, I was very lonely because of my health problems. I was very skinny, so because of that, I was very afraid that I would not fit. I was looking in the mirror and I was hating my body, because everybody was kind of making fun of me, that I was very skinny, that I was like very weak. I also had a very bad acne on my face. Like when I say bad, I really mean it was bad, because sometimes when I would walk on the street, random people that I didn't know would stop to tell me that I look disgusting and that I had to do something with my face. So like because of that, I received a lot of really, really ugly words in my early teenage, and I became very depressed. And because of all the stuff that I thought about men and masculinity and about my body, I started to reject myself. So like every morning when I would see myself in the mirror, I was really hating my life. I was hating myself. I really thought that I was being punished for something that I didn't do, and I didn't understand why my life was so bad and so difficult. And I just fell into this kind of very heavy depression, even from a very early age. Yeah, so when I was 13, I got a ticket to a summer camp. My aunt bought the ticket as she didn't know it was supposed to be a Christian camp, neither did my parents, so I had to go. At that time, I didn't really have a very clear opinion about Christianity because in real life, I didn't know anyone who was like a real Christian. I only knew about like this Christian religion that was, practicing in being practiced in Orthodox churches and specific services, but I didn't know any real person that I could see the character of Jesus being revealed to me. So nobody came to me to tell me the gospel. Nobody came to me to tell me that Jesus loved me at any point in my life at that time. So at that summer camp, I was really surprised because I got to see people who really expressed their faith in everything that they did, in the way they spoke, in the way they behaved. I was like shocked that those people were actually happy from morning until evening, and they were so giving in everything. Like their love was sacrificial, their love was like speaking through their actions, and I just couldn't understand how they could be, because it wasn't just one day, it was for 10 days over and over again, and people of all ages who were coming to that camp to like disciple us and talk to us about the love of Jesus. So every year I was going back to that same camp because I saw that there was something there that looked promising and that I was looking for in my heart. I didn't know exactly how to put it in words, but every single summer that I would go to that camp, I used to have this kind of encounter with God, with the Holy Spirit. Like, for example, the very first time I had this moment when I just started to cry, and I cried for 2 hours, and I couldn't understand why I was crying, and nobody was actually explaining to me what I was crying, because nobody told me that, you are touched by the Holy Spirit, like God is, showing you his love and stuff like that. So I was just crying and crying and crying, and I just felt like this overwhelming feeling that was good, but I couldn't understand what it was. And I think that was calling me back there every single year. And I was going there with this kind of hope and hunger in my heart that something would change. But unfortunately, when I would go back home and I would go back to my normal daily life, things would go back to, kind of normal routine type of life. But things started to change when I was around 18, and I actually started to go to church as well and to be involved in their Bible studies and to be involved in their worship. But it was very short because after that I had to leave to go to university in another country. I think I started to be attracted to the same sex probably around the same age, maybe 12 or 13. But I couldn't really process what was happening because, as I said, I didn't really have friends. So I wasn't able to like speak to other people about what I was feeling, to know if what I'm feeling is normal, if everybody feels the same way. So it was something that I was holding for myself. And at the same time, nobody around me, not even in church, people were not talking about sexuality. In my family, we never talked about sexuality. So it was really, I was noticing that it kind of feels weird. It kind of feels a little bit off, but I wasn't having any source or any person to go to check if what I'm feeling is actually right, or if I have a problem. So because of all the feelings that were going inside of me, I was looking for connection. I was looking to socialize, but because in real life it was really difficult because of all my other issues. At some point, I stumbled somehow across these two other older men. I met them on the internet, and they started to tell me that I look handsome, that I am a really nice person, that I am lovable, and these were some kind of concepts and words that I never heard about myself. Like nobody ever told me that I am handsome, that I'm a lovable person, that I'm a nice person to be around, and things like that. So these two men really started to compliment me a lot, and I really started to feel safe around them and comfortable. And at some point, they started to introduce me to all this sexual world, and even though it felt weird and uncomfortable, I just accepted everything they said because they were the only people in my life that were actually listening to all that I was saying. They were my problems. And remember, I said that I was very depressed at that time. I didn't have any friends. I was having a lot of issues with my body, with my face, with bullying. So they were there for me when I needed it. Like, for example, at some point when I would come home from school being super depressed after being bullied, they were the only one who me. So because of that, I just went along with everything they said because I simply didn't want to lose them. So I thought that if man could be anything good in this life, these two men probably would be a good example of that. So I just followed what they said. I didn't have anybody to in my life to speak to about all these things except those two other men. So they were the only ones that actually knew what I was going through and knew about my feelings. I was basically just sharing with them, and I felt that something was off about our relationship. I felt that some of the things they were telling me or asking me to do were not quite right. But again, they were the only ones in my life that understood me, accepted me, loved me, helped me, comforted me. So I was committed to go along with that relationship because I didn't want to lose the only people in my life that I could trust. Growing up, when maybe I was 15 or stuff, something like that, especially when I discovered pornography, I kind of understood that these things were not right. No, let me say again. So as I grew up, especially when I discovered pornography and I became addicted to pornography, then at some point, as I said, I started to read the Bible when I was like more towards 18 years old. And I kind of understood that all these things were not right, they were not godly, and I was feeling deeply convicted about my addictions, about my feelings, and I understood that maybe I can work on my addictions, but at the same time, how my feelings, how am I supposed to manage my feelings, because it's not something that I'm choosing to feel. So that was a very deep conflict within myself that was making me feel really guilty and sinful, because I knew that God is requiring something from me, but at the same time, I have no idea how to deliver this and how to change. And there's also nobody that I could speak to about this, because nobody is ever mentioning anything about sexuality. I think the root causes of all my struggles with identity and sexuality um, were that as I grew up, I really saw men in this very bad position, like addicted to alcohol, unable to lead their families properly, violent towards women in their lives, and that really turned me off towards everything that had to do with masculinity and manhood. Also, the way women spoke about men, that they're idiots, that they're incapable, that they are jerks, that also made me feel like I don't want to become that. So I rejected everything that had to do with masculinity. Also, when I think I was maybe 7 or 8, at some point in a specific setup, there was a 40-year-old man probably who asked me what's my name, and I said that I'm Victor. And I remember he looked at me like very confused, and then he touched me in my private area to just make sure that I'm a boy, because apparently the fact that I said that I'm Victor was not enough. So I remember that after that specific event, I left feeling very embarrassed, and I thought to myself that like my appearance doesn't really prove that I'm a man. So like it has to be my sexual side to prove that I'm a man. So I guess that also led me into some sexual confusion, the fact that I had to be involved sexually to prove that I'm a man. Um, Definitely the two other older men that I had in my life that kind of groomed me into, all this sexual stuff that they told me that friends do between themselves, and with all the acceptance and validation that they were giving me. And I remember I really believe that words have a really big impact into our lives, because when I was very young, I was very um, uh, cute as a child. Like I remember that when I was walking with my mom on the street, some of my mom's friends or even like strangers on the street would stop and tell my mom, "Oh, you have such a beautiful girl." And I remember I was smiling and I was just feeling so like it felt kind of funny, but at the same time I was confused. Like, why are people saying that I'm a girl when I know that I'm a boy? So I guess as a very young child, that also leaves some traces of confusion or openness towards confusion. So basically, I had to deal with a lot of words that were spoken over me, and all the bad words that were spoken over me, as like in the bullying that I was experiencing at school, the fact that I was disconnected from men in my life. I was also disconnected from my dad. I couldn't connect emotionally with him. So I was always looking for love, and like I was looking for a dad in all these other men that I had in my life, and in all the pornography and all of that, I was actually looking for a father. Um, and also the rejection wound that had to be healed, because all my life I felt rejected at school. I felt rejected everywhere I went. I felt rejected by the men in my life because I always felt that I had to compete with them to prove myself that I'm a man. One of my first breakthroughs after I had become a Christian already was during COVID, when I was still struggling a lot with all of the stuff, because now I was a Christian, like a proper Christian. I was following Jesus. I was reading the Bible. I was praying. I was going to church, and at the same time, I was struggling, and it was just making me feel really, really convicted because I didn't know how to deal with all of this. So at some point, I really cried out to God, and I had a moment by myself in my living room where, after a while of just being in prayer, I was on the floor, and I don't remember like how much time it passed, because I it felt like I was in a trance. When I woke up, I noticed that I was wet. The floor was wet. There was snot everywhere, and I couldn't remember what had happened. And I remember I just went to the bathroom to wash my face and stuff like that. And when I looked into the mirror, I felt that something was different about me, but I couldn't identify what. But later on, I noticed that after that encounter on that day, I never ever felt like a woman again. And I never ever felt uncomfortable in my body. Like from that day, something changed about the way I felt in my body. Like I was comfortable. I was good in my body for the first time in over 20 years. And I never ever was depressed again. And I never ever thought about ending my life again. And I know that on that day, something left me, like something lifted off my brain, and it became so much easier to navigate through all my other issues and addictions and hear God. So one word that really opened my eyes to this spiritual principle was, one day I was just praying, and while I was praying, this word just came out of my mouth. I just said, Lord, heal my heart to fear your name. And then I stopped, and I thought, like, what did I just say? Because I never like said those kind of words. And I was like thinking that was interesting. And then I continued to pray. And after that, when I went to like read the Bible, it just happened that I opened the Bible at Psalm 86, verse 11. And the last part of verse 11 says, Unite my heart to fear your name. And it's basically the same thing that I had said in prayer just a couple of minutes before. And I never read that or like saw that before. And I was thinking, what does it mean? Like I was thinking, God, are you trying to speak to me something? Are you trying to tell me something? Because like, what does it mean to unite my heart to fear your name? And then I started to like pray about it. And I spent a couple of days like praying into this. Like I started to read some commentaries. I asked some friends. And then somehow I came across Isaiah 61, verse 1, where it says about Jesus that he was the anointed one who came to heal the wounds of the brokenhearted. And when I looked in the original translation, I saw that the Hebrew words that were used, so it's two words, is the word habash and shabar, and they literally are the same words that are used to like bandage a wound. When you have a wound, you bandage the wound, and like the broken hearted, like something that is really broken into pieces. So God is really saying that He came to bandage the pieces of our hearts. And then like things started to make sense for me, because in Psalm 86:11 it says, unite my heart to fear your name, like bring all the pieces of my heart together so that I could fear God and live in the fear of God properly. And I realized that my heart was like so scattered and like so broken that all kind of pieces of my heart were in different places in different times of my life, because of all the stuff that I went through and all the broken relationships and all the words that I heard and all the things that I've been through, that I needed God to help me bring my heart back together as a whole, so that I would be able to follow Him properly, not with just a part of my heart or a piece of my heart, but with my whole heart. Because I realized that if my heart is not whole, I can't even belong to God wholeheartedly or do things for God wholeheartedly. So I started to pray for that, and I started to ask God to reveal to me what were those things that needed to be brought back together as a whole in my heart. And one of the things was forgiveness. I realized that if I really wanted to experience breakthrough in my life and healing inside of me, I had to forgive all the people in my past that like hurt me or spoke things over me or traumatized me or called me names and things like that. I had to forgive the men in my life that, I saw that like made me push away masculinity. I had to forgive the women in my life that spoke um, offensively about men. I had to forgive my dad for maybe not being super connected with me. I had to forgive those two men that introduced me to all this stuff. I had to forgive my bullies as well. So as I started to release more and more forgiveness, God started to heal my heart and detach me from all the wounds and from all the traumas that I had in my life. So at the moment, I'm living a life of peace and joy. I have a very strong community around me of people that I can really trust with my strong moments in my life and my weak moments of my life. Um, I have hope for the future, and I am learning to grow and to walk more and more in the identity that God has for my life and the calling He has for my life. Um, I don't struggle with same-sex attraction anymore on a daily basis, but I might have like maybe once or twice a year a moment when like I feel a temptation, or when I remember about the things that happened to me in my past, or maybe when there's a trigger or something like that. But what I noticed is that whenever there's a trigger or something that really bothers me, there has to be either a wound or a lie that I'm believing. So every time when these moments occur, I am asking God to show me what is the lie that I have to break and replace with the truth, or what is the wound that I still need to heal in order to break free from whatever struggle or temptation I'm experiencing at that moment. And you can only do that when you have people in your life that you can speak to about this and be open and transparent and vulnerable, because you just cannot do it by yourself. Like, we are not meant to be isolated in our struggle. So yeah, that's where I am. Yeah, to the young people that go through similar things and struggle with their sexuality, identity, I would tell you guys that Jesus really, really loves you and He sees you. You're not alone, you're not forgotten. So really put your trust in Jesus. Like, He's the only one that will never let you down. And the fact is that He has so much good stuff for your life. Like all the things that you're feeling and experiencing at the moment, all the struggles, all the temptations, all the pain, none of that is from Him. Like, none of that is His desire and plan for your life. He has joy, He has peace, He has comfort, He has love for you, and He wants to give those things to you if you only open your heart and pursue Him. And if you ask Him to show up in your life, to prove you the truth, to convince you of the truth, to bring the right people into your life, He will do it because He's faithful. He's done it for me, and He will do it for you as well.